Hi, hello, welcome or welcome back to my channel. My name is Bethany. My pronouns are she, her, and this is a little space on the internet where I talk about my knits and any other bits that I feel like. First of all, I apologize if my voice sounds a little froggy. I have a full cup of tea and a bottle of water to help that, but we'll see how long my voice lasts. I am coming to you from a very snowy Northern Ontario, Canada, because it is January and it is winter. It is very winter. But all that to say, that means, yeah, I'm not going outside a lot. So I've been knitting a lot. So let's talk about it. It's been about 4 weeks since I last recorded and uploaded. So I think that was, yeah, it was probably 4 weeks ago because that was my 2026 making goals video, which I'll link down below or up here or wherever they put it now, um, if you want to take a look at that. But let's talk about, um, first of all, what I'm wearing, which happens to be um, one of my first finished objects. Just being very careful not to spill anything. Okay, this is my love note. And this is my second one of these. And I was holding two yarns together. That's actually a pretty good visual of how the whole thing looks. I'm not going to stand up because the setup is precarious. So I was holding a sport weight yarn. It was Dye Pretty Yarns, whatever their sport weight is called, and the colorway was called Toothless. And then I was holding it together with a thrifted, very, very purple lace yarn to sort of achieve close to gauge. My gauge was off, but it turned out really nicely, and the marl is beautiful because I feel like when you overall look at the sweater, you don't see brown or purple, you see mauve or brownie purple or whatever you want to call it. Of course, the hilarious part is that there was one section in one of the balls of yarn um, that was much darker, like nearly black compared to the rest of the yarn. So that ended up on my cuffs. And I made that choice because I was working on the body and I only had so much yarn. I only had 3 skeins. And the hem also has this very dark stripe at the bottom, and I wasn't going to rip it out and try to sort of cobble together the remaining skeins in order to get rid of that dark stripe. So I just decided to make it a design feature by putting it on the cuffs. I do really like that I decreased that. First of all, I made these full length sleeves because I have a tendency to like tap out for sleeves right about here. I've also talked about this before where it's just like I have this tendency to do like 3/4 or bracelet length sleeves, either because I run out of yarn or because I figure I push my sleeves up constantly. So I'm like, I don't need to knit a full sleeve, but I'm actually really glad that I did knit full sleeves. I think it looks really cute. I did a rapid decrease here before the cuff. I think when I originally finished, I had sort of left it and I hadn't done the decrease. And then I tried it on and I really didn't like it. So I much prefer the sort of rapid decrease. So it like balloons just a little. And I think it sort of fits with like the vibe of the sweater. Also, the other modification I made was I only did one repeat of the lace yoke. And then for the rest of the yoke pattern rows, I just knit in the round to achieve the yoke depth that the pattern, the size that I was knitting in the pattern. And I really like that because I when I knit my original love note, while I do really like how the 2 rows of lace look, I felt that they came down too far. So like it made it awkward to wear anything underneath that wouldn't like really show. So if like I happen to throw this on top of a t-shirt that has like more than one color or a graphic on it, you could almost really see the graphic through the lace because it came down so far. Whereas like with it being up here, most of the time my t-shirts don't have something going on right up here usually. So I'm also a little bit more conscious of like what I wear underneath this, because I do like to wear something underneath it. So even though you can sort of see here, because I'm only wearing a tank top underneath it, you can sort of see the skin showing through, but I don't love to show that off. So yeah, so I think it looks really cute. The yarns held together feel quite nice. When I initially put it on after blocking, I was worried that it was itchy. Like I suddenly had this moment where I'm like, oh my god, did I knit myself an itchy sweater? Oh no. But with wearing, that has sort of calmed down. I guess I've gotten used to the feel of the sweater. I will admit, if I overheat in this sweater, it is quite itchy. And I think that's down to the sport weight yarn, the content of that, which I think is superwash merino, but I don't remember. If I correct myself, it'll be somewhere on the screen. But yeah, when you overheat in a wool sweater, it's like, it's probably going to be itchy. So yeah, but it's been really good for these cold days. Really nice for layering, because I gave it just enough positive ease. I picked the right size with the gauge that I had, and so it fits nicely without being super oversized, but there's not negative ease. So yeah, I really like it. I'm really happy with it. I did finish it around Christmas. Did not wear it at Christmas. I think I wore it at New Year's, if I remember rightly, but maybe I didn't. I don't quite remember. That time between Christmas and New Year's is always a blur, so no one knows what day it is or what you wore or anything like that. Okay, enough about the sweater. I think I've covered everything to have to do with that. Let's move on to my other finished objects. In my last proper podcast, I was working on these. This is the October Cuff Club Volume 2 from Summerly Knits. Let's all take a drink of water, because I need one. Better. And these were knit out of some yarn that I got at a craft swap at my work. And the yarn is beautiful, but way too rustic for me. So like, these are not for me, but they turned out beautifully. And it does have me inspired to use yarn that I will wear on my feet to knit these again, because that little lace pattern there is just so beautiful and really quite intuitive. I did have to have the chart in front of me to knit these because I just couldn't quite do without the chart. But they turned out beautifully. And even though this yarn is too rustic for me, it knit up beautifully. Like it is gorgeous. So like, lucky person who's gonna get these socks. I don't know who that's gonna be, but lucky them. So those turned out wonderfully. I also was working on my, and I apologize that these are a little wrinkled because I was wearing them and then I folded them up and put them away. These were my, in lieu of knitting Advent socks, even though I did get an Advent, yarn Advent this year, I purchased a sock set from Birch Grove Yarns called Victorian Christmas and knit up these socks to wear at Christmas time. And I did get them done in time to wear did I wear them on Christmas Eve? I think I wore them on Christmas Eve. I for sure wore them on Christmas Day because I wore my burgundy sweater and these socks because they went well together. And working with this yarn was just lovely. I loved how, well, of course, how different parts of the skein were for the main color. But working with this yarn was gorgeous. I loved it. It was just the right thing to work on. And I do have some leftover. I don't know if I have enough left for shorties that would look like this. But we'll see. But these ones are for me and I have worn them and they fit great. The pattern I'm using is it's a little bit of a riff off of Summerly Knits I'm So Basic sock. I knit less of a cuff, mostly because I'm never I'm never confident that I'm gonna have enough of a mini to do heels and toes, or sorry, cuffs and toes, because I always want to do that, and then I'm never sure if I'm gonna have enough to do heels as well. I decided to skip heels because I knew there was enough yardage in the main color to not have to switch and do a contrast heel. So I did that. Great choice, because there was only a little bit left of the mini, the sort of brownish mini. But yeah, that's why I did a shorter cuff. And then I did a longer leg. These, I think, are a 6-inch leg, or close to a 6-inch leg, which um, when I'm doing longer socks, not shorties, or ankle socks, that has sort of become my standard rather than 7 or 8 inches. 8 inches just feels like knitting forever. Okay, so those were my Christmas socks. Let's move on to, I think, the first thing that I finished in 2026. And he's adorable. Here, let me just do this, and hopefully if I do that, it'll focus on him and not me. Isn't he sweet? So I participate in Ash Alberg's Creative Coven, and the in January there's usually always a oh gosh, it's escaping me now. Basically a creative challenge. Maybe it's just called the Creative Coven Challenge. I didn't think it was that simple somehow, but maybe that's just what it's called. Anyway, there's usually a theme. Often it is wardrobe related, but when we and I also participate in her like monthly craft night, and when they were sort of um uh casting about for theme ideas for January, somebody mentioned knitting small things, right? This has just come up in conversation, and we all kind of agreed that that was like amazing, because like basically you could knit anything small, right? It didn't matter what it was. It didn't have to be a toy. It could just be anything small. And I took that as the motivation I needed to finally knit a gnome. This is the Gnome Fun, like no fun, or no fun, like Gnome Fun. I will correct myself on screen. And the challenge part of this for me, I decided that this little guy was going to be knit entirely out of leftovers or what I had in stash. But everything though. So I was not going to buy anything to make this little guy, including stuffing and the little bit of a weight that he kind of needs to sort of like balance properly. So no problem. Because these little guys take so little yarn, like literal yardage, I was able to hold some sock weight double. So you might recognize this. This is leftover from the October socks, because I thought that would be cute as a little hat. And then I had some leftover sort of marled self-striping from a previous pair of socks from last year. And then I always tend to have some white or cream colored yarn on hand, mostly from when I went through a big phase of knitting those little frogs. And I sort of keep all of that stuff together. So I was sort of able to dig through there and find gnome yarn. And then I managed to find enough stuffing to stuff him enough, and something to use as a weight, so that he's still a little off kilter, but I love him. But just enough of a weight so that he doesn't just randomly fall over. And he's wonderful. I think he's great. This arm is a little wonky when I sewed it on, but you know what? We'll call it charming, not wonky. So I can see why people love knitting the gnomes, and I can see why also the slightly more involved ones are really popular, because like some of them really have like shaping on the arm or the hand, or like the body has like texture details. So I can see why people are really into them. I'm not saying I'm jumping on the train, but I'm not saying that. And I could certainly be convinced to knit more of this particular pattern, because quite literally I did it in 2 evenings. like that's how. So if I've got all my materials, it's very quick. So that was really charming. Also, this little guy is not going to stay with me. He is going to go to a coworker of mine who loves gnomes. So hopefully he will be received well and enjoy his new home. Last thing is a very recent finish. Um, if you've been here for a minute, you'll know that I love to knit hats, but I only wear one hat myself. And it is a cabled hat, a gray cabled hat that I knit ages and ages and ages ago. I don't want to say when I first started knitting because that's not true, but when I was working at the local yarn store part-time, and I actually knit it as a sample and then got it back when we didn't need the sample anymore. And it is just my go-to fall winter hat because I do love the heatheredness of the gray yarn that I used, and the gauge is really tight, which sort of does make it a good winter hat, but because of the there's sort of like a very small lace panel in between the cables. The wind does kind of get through it, and I've been really noticing that this winter because it's been cold. It, as a Canadian, it's been cold. Okay, like the wind is cold and my ears don't like that. So, all that being said, I picked up a ball of, it's Universal Yarns. I think it's deluxe tweed worsted or deluxe worsted tweed. I don't remember what order the words go in, but I got it in the color, I believe it's onyx, but it was basically whatever their black colorway was. I don't know why I wanted to punish myself by making a black hat with cables, but it actually wasn't that bad. I think I really liked the idea of this, and this was the slips and ladders pattern, and I apologize, I forget the designer's name, but it is. I will unfold the brim because that's a folded up brim. So it just has a 2x2 rib brim, and then you knit the cable pattern a number of times, and then you do the decreases, and then you're done. Very straightforward, clear pattern. I did need to have the pattern in front of me. I did not find it to be an intuitive pattern. Now, maybe if I had had to do more repeats of the pattern rows, it would have gotten in there, but for the number of times I needed to repeat, I really didn't, I couldn't get it in my brain. So this was like a keep it on the couch with the pattern next to it and work on it when I'm not watching or listening to anything engaging. The only modification that I made was I believe the pattern says to knit your brim to 5 inches. I know I knit mine to 6, which I know was more than what was in the pattern, mostly because I did really want quite a thick, wide, deep, whatever whatever descriptor you want to use, folded brim. I just did my hair this morning, so I'm not going to put it on, but maybe I'll pop up a picture of myself wearing it. I will say that when I initially tried it on before blocking it, I was like, it is too tight. Like, not too tight in that it doesn't fit my head. It fit my head, but it squeezed my head like a lot. And I was worried. I was worried about that. So I blocked it. And it has relaxed a little bit. It is still a very close fitting hat, which upon reflection, I think is not a bad thing. I'll just have to deal with like hat hair when I wear it, or be prepared to like leave the hat on just in case. But hopefully with this double folded brim, and the fact that there's not a lace pattern in with the, let's see if I can get up close so that you can sort of see the, oh, that's pretty good. So that you can see the cable. This was not a very, I have to say, this was not a very intuitive cable to me. And I have knit a number of cabled things in my knitting career. But that's not to say it's a bad pattern. I just didn't find it intuitive. But the result is lovely. So yeah, hopefully that is going to keep my little ears warm. I don't have little ears. What am I talking about? Hopefully it'll keep my ears warm. and see me through the rest of the winter so I can finally give the gray hat a little bit of a rest. Yeah, and I do like that designer's the look of this designer's other textured hats, because they sort of seem to specialize in that, and I think they're really cool. But yeah, so that I think is all the finished objects. If I've missed a finished object, editing Bethany will know. That's okay. Okay, let's move on to works in progress. So here's the thing. After finishing this sweater and hitting the new year, I just wanted to cast on everything. Also, in my previous video about goals, I was talking about how 2026 is the year of the yellow sweater. The yellow sweater is going to get knit. I'm going to use that yellow yarn and I'm going to knit it. And I had said in that video that that the yellow sweater was on the needles and it almost had sleeves, and it was wonderful and it was very exciting. A week after I recorded that video, I finished the sweater. And you're probably thinking, well, Bethany, you didn't show it to us. And you're right. I'm not showing it to you as a finished object because it's not finished. I finished the sweater and I blocked it and I put it on. And while I was aiming for this cardigan, which is the Ochre cardigan by Ambah O'Brien, I was aiming for this to have positive ease, essentially. I was knitting a size that was going to give me probably an inch or two of positive ease. When it blocked out, it was too big. And by too big, I just mean that when I put it on my shoulders, and I will grant that I have uneven shoulder heights. It's kind, you probably can't see it, but it is kind of pronounced. And so I always have trouble with things falling off one shoulder because it is the lower uneven shoulder. But this was really bad. This was slipping off both shoulders. Like the sleeves fit nice enough that it wasn't like the sleeves were what was dragging it down, but like it was just falling off all the time. I wore it to work. The outfit I wore was fantastic, and I am going to repeat that outfit. And maybe by the time this is uploaded, maybe there will be an outfit photo, because once again, I'm very close to finishing this, but we'll see. Or I'll just wear the outfit on another podcast episode. Great outfit, but I was so annoyed. I was so annoyed at this sweater. Of course, I had put a few weeks of work into it. Really enjoyed the process, actually. Very well written pattern. After going through the lace portion, both on the bottom part of the body and on the cuff of the sleeve, very intuitive lace pattern. Really liked that, and like almost tempted to knit another one in another color. We'll see now that I've knit it twice. But I was just so annoyed that it turned out that I had chosen a size while giving me positive ease. It was genuinely too big. That really annoyed me. So after I came home, took off the sweater, and basically sulked for about 12 hours about the fact that it was too big. I frogged it. I frogged it all. Frogged it all right up, and put some of it back on my yarn winder and sort of steamed it out so it wasn't like full yarn ramen. I wasn't going to torture myself by knitting like off the sweater onto the other sweater with yarn ramen. I can't do that. I sometimes, when I will say, when I frog things, I do sometimes do the full gamut where I skein the yarn and on my Swift and tie it up and then soak it overnight and then dry it, so that it's as close to back to its original state than I can get. Sometimes I just steam it though, because I don't have patience. Because what I was afraid of was when I frogged it, I was like, what if I never cast it on again? And here we are again. It'll be the end of 2026, and I'm talking about how I haven't knit the yellow sweater again, even though it was finished. So all that being said, I'll show you where I am with the yellow sweater. So I cast on with a smaller size. I have decided that I am okay with ending up with 0 or negative ease on this project because I chose about 1 or 2, I believe I chose 2 sizes smaller than what I had originally done, so that I'm hopefully accounting for how much the yarn is going to block again. Although, because it's already been blocked, who knows? Who knows, right? Anyway, let me show you where I am. There's a body and it's finished. And we have one sleeve that is, I've barely started on the lace portion. I may be 1 or 2 rows in on the lace portion of the sleeve, but the main part of the sleeve is knit, and you can sort of see I didn't try very hard with this ball of yarn that I'm using for the sleeve to steam it out. I didn't try very hard with that one. So it's fine. It's fine. It's not too bad. But I'm really liking how this is looking. I think my body ended up being slightly longer than what the pattern says. I tried to get as close as I could, and then when I measured, it turned out that I was like maybe a quarter of an inch longer than what it said, and I was like, it's fine. That should be my motto. I should get that embroidered on a pillow. It's fine. It's fine. Yeah, so I'm really pleased with how this is coming along, and the speed at which I have sort of caught back up to where I was. So this has been a saga, and it continues to be a saga. I imagine there will be another chapter to this story before we're actually done and I'm actually wearing it again. But I do think it looks wonderful. I love that lace pattern. Very, very nice. And it blocks out so nicely. And I'm looking forward to that. So maybe this weekend I'll get one sleeve totally done because I only have the lace portion and then the I-cord bind off to do on this, and then one more sleeve, and then it can be done again. Very exciting. Yarn on the floor. The other thing, of course, that I don't know if this happens to anybody else, but New Year comes and cast-on-itis is real. It's real. So, of course, I cast the yellow sweater on, but also I cast on a whole bunch of other things. Well, let's start with my half-finished object. Of course, I finished a pair of socks, so I needed a pair of socks. So, sock number 1, hooray. This is, I believe it's Yarnalia, and I'm completely blanking. Maybe it's Stormy is the name of their sock weight, but I know that the color is Summer Sunset. And I really like how it's sort of like, it's not truly self-striping, but it happens to be striping at this gauge in the round. And I really like it. It's got blues and sort of pinky mauves, and like just, there's like one section of it in there that's like a green teal, and it's really lovely. So I am knitting the Basic Rib Sock by Kate Atherley. And here's sock number 2. I have turned the heel and I'm on the foot. So basically done. But all I have to do is the length of the foot and then the toe, and then there's another pair of socks. And I got inspired to knit the Basic Rib Socks by Kate Atherley. I've probably mentioned it before, but that is the pattern that I learned to knit adult size sock weight socks with. Like Summerlee was not really around as a designer when I learned to knit, so that was the pattern that I used. after knitting like baby socks and stuff like that in with thicker yarn. And once I wanted to move on to knitting sock weight socks, that was the pattern I used. And I mentioned it a couple times, and having done that, having mentioned it in the podcast, I was like, you know what? Maybe I need a moment to go back to basics and like just knit that pattern again. And man, it holds up. It's still a great pattern. It is a 3x1 rib. Just stretch it out there so you can sort of see it. And you do that all the way through. Obviously not on the sole of the sock once you turn the heel, but it is lovely. It's just engaging enough. Like if you find stockinette to be absolutely torturous, 3x1 is less repetitive than 2x2 or 1x1. So it does, I find it does keep your brain a little more engaged, but it's also great TV knitting. So yeah, so that's that. I cast those on, and we're making good progress. The other thing I cast on was to find places to put things now. There we go. Before Christmas, gosh, story time. Before Christmas, I went to a trunk show at a local yarn store and purchased, for the first time ever, some fluffy yarn. Generally speaking, I'm not a fan of fluffy yarn. And the moral of this story is like, I'm still kind of not convinced. Right. So I'm not quite convinced. But the fluffy yarn that this person had on show is a, let me get the label so that I can remember and say it right. So this is also Dye Pretty Yarns. And this is baby Surrey alpaca and silk. So not mohair, because I can tell you, I do not like mohair. Hot take, I don't like mohair. Mostly, I find it too itchy. Someone would argue that I haven't met the right mohair. That's probably true. But until I do meet the right mohair, you can't convince me that it's fun to knit with and wear, because I think it's too gosh darn itchy. That being said, this beautiful, fluffy Surrey alpaca with silk got me. It's my favorite color. So here we are, trying to knit a thing. I only bought one skein because there was only one skein in this color. But I'm like, you got me. You got me. If I'm going to knit with a fluffy yarn, I'm going to knit with it in my favorite color. So what I decided to cast on was, and I was inspired by this pattern initially anyway, even though it uses a fluffy yarn. And I usually don't purchase patterns that use fluffy yarns because I'm like, I'm not ever going to do that. But this is the Sodapop scarf by Poison Girl Knits, which is Amy Apple. Never know how to pronounce it, so I apologize in advance. But it is a little scarf pattern, and it is fluffy, and I thought it was so cute, and it doesn't use a lot of yardage. So I thought, even if it's torturous, I'm not knitting very much. And I will say that I'm probably maybe a third of the way through. Not convinced I love knitting with fluffy yarn. I will say that initially I was knitting this on a metal needle, and I have since switched to wood. It's a little better. I think it was too slidey on the metal needles, which fair. But it's just, it sticks to itself so much. I had to rip back like a little bit, like maybe a total of like 4 rows, and oh man, not a good time in my opinion. Mostly because I had the wrong stitch count. But yeah, so that's sort of where I am. So I don't know if this is the most successful project. However, I was very excited to initially cast it on and get working on it because I was like, well, I've never knit with fluffy yarn before. This will be very interesting. I remain to be convinced. However, this does look very nice, and it feels very nice. But feeling nice on my hands is a different thing from feeling nice over here. So we'll see. I think I am going to finish it unless I get really annoyed. And if I finish it and it's not for me, that's okay. It'll be a gift for someone who is less annoyed by fluffy yarns or just enamored of the finished object. That's fine too. Yeah, so like I'm having a bit of cast-on-itis and not all of it is successful. I will say that. I also cast on another pair of socks because, of course, once I turned the heel on those semi-stripy socks, I was like, well, gotta cast on another pair of socks because we can't not have socks. So this is also inspired by my garter stitch blanket that is in the other room, which I will talk about next. Because that is still a work in progress. But having gone through a whole bunch of like mini skeins that I have plus leftovers to use in the blanket, I was like, ooh, I still have this that I haven't touched. This is Lang Jawol. Yes, it is superwash. And I believe the colorway is White Smoke. And I hadn't done anything with it yet. And I have some leftovers from Full Moon Fibers, which is what this lovely pink is. And I was like, well, those will look cute together as a sock. So this is going to be a shorty sock because this is only a 50-gram ball skein. So I'm going to use the Full Moon Fibers as cuff and toe, and hopefully we're going to get a pair out of it. It might be a small pair. It might not be a pair that fits my feet, which is fine. I think that's fine. I think I have someone I could gift those to if that turns out to be the case. So that is another pair of socks because I decided I needed a plain stockinette pair of socks. And also shorties are always a win. They're pretty fast in my opinion. So yeah, I wanted to have those to work on. Finally, I've swatched for this a number of times, but only recently cast it on, so there's not a lot to see. Apologies. Here's a line of pink stuff on a needle. And this is fingering weight. This is Malabrigo sock in Light of Love. Pretty sure that's what it is. And this will hopefully be a beauty school top by Poison Girl. Been on a bit of a Poison Girl kick recently. She recently announced a built not bought knit along where she has sort of gathered sort of like the fan favorites of her designs, which are all vintage inspired. And she sort of gathered like the fan favorites into a collection called the Capsule Collection, and the beauty school top is one of those. And I have actually had the beauty school top like in my mind as something that I want to knit, basically not since purchasing that yarn, but like pretty close. And that is some deep stash from when I worked part-time at the local knitting store. So again, I guess 2026 is the year to do the thing finally. Yeah, so I've cast on for that. It's very exciting. And hopefully chose the right size for that one. Let's hope. I have chosen a size that I think will end up and the top is supposed to have negative ease, but I've chosen a size that doesn't have a ton of negative ease for me, maybe only 1 or maybe maximum 2 inches of negative ease for me. So, and then hopefully I have enough yarn because currently I only have 2 skeins of that plus a mini skein that I think I might use to finish the bottom part of the sleeve once I get there, but I'm hoping the 2 skeins are enough for the body and most of the sleeve. I do know that I can get like there Malabrigo is still making that color, so I could get more, but I know that the dye lots will be vastly different because of how old my 2 skeins are. They were bought at the same time. The dye lot would be way different, so I would be contending with having to alternate skeins, which I'm generally actually too lazy to do, but I know it's the right thing to do, to sort of have it blend nicely. Otherwise, I end up with something like that. Although, as we see, I can turn that into like a design feature. Anyway, that is all I have for you today. I'm not going to do a what's next, only because I don't quite have enough time to go through sort of what's percolating in my brain. Also, this is a lot of stuff. So I think I'm going to try to finish a few more things before I get too excited about what's in my queue. I will say though that I have a lot of, not a lot. I have a few like homeware patterns in my queue that I'm excited about. Mostly cushion covers. Since casting on the garter blanket, I've been really into the idea of knitting more things for my home, and I have yarn to do that with. So because it's stuff that I have acquired or been given that I'm pretty sure are not going to ever become garments. So it's like, well, what do I do with it? Because it's lovely yarn. Maybe maybe a home thing, and it's like you can never have too many cushion covers. So, but we'll maybe talk about that in my next episode. That is all I have for you today. Thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate everyone who watches the videos, gives it a thumbs up, comments. I really appreciate it all. I hope that wherever you are feeling safe. And if you're not feeling safe, you are at least taking care of yourself and your neighbors as well as you can. And until I see you next time, keep those stitches moving.